SigmaBroadband is seeking $25 million in capital. Before I get there, I think it's very important that you understand my background as a CEO. My background is I started in the cable television industry in 1972, about 24 years after the industry was born. I've been very fortunate and been able to build over 65 systems in 17 states. And with that, I've actually owned a couple of those systems. As I said, we're seeking $25 million in capital. And as we go through, we'll tell you what we're looking to do with that capital, how we plan to deploy that capital, and why SigmaBroadband as a triple play provider is different than any other provider out there. First of all, I'll tell you, one of the things we're doing is we're focusing on rural America. That is the first and most important. I'll tell you a little bit about the company. First of all, 2012 is when we started. The company was founded. We acquired $10 million in assets in 2013. December 2013, we filed our S1, and then, of course, in November, we got a ticker symbol of SGRB. At that time, we were Pink Sheets. We are now on the QB. So with QB, as we know, is very transparent, and we're very happy to be there. April 2015, we started moving in a direction of trying to raise capital to further our business plan. We're prepared to offer services in 50 states at this point. We have licenses that allow us to operate in 50 states. We also can terminate telephone calls in 240 countries. We're focusing on rural markets. Why? Because the United States Department of Agriculture, the FCC, has said these are the areas that are totally underserved, and we're seeking a partner in the retail market to help us with our trading volume. What do? Triple play service, telephone, internet, television. And as Michael had this a very good segue, he talked about television. It was a good segue into what we're doing. What makes us a little different? What makes us a little different is the fact that we can provide our product via coaxial cable, copper, WiMAX, fiber optic cable. We don't have just one particular medium by which we can provide our services. Our services allow us to do data center service, IP telephony, transit routing services, and again, I said we can terminate in 240 countries. 50 states we're allowed to go into at this point. What's the business opportunity? We intend to be a disruptive company in the environment. And as I go through this presentation, I'll tell you exactly how we plan to be disruptive. Our core business is going to be quality of service. Our core business is serving the underserved in the rural markets. There are 100,000 subscribers is our target for where we're going. 100,000 subscribers, and we are planning to participate in the Ombuds Broadband Initiative. And what that is, that deals with underserved and unserved areas. Those you may not be familiar with, the federal government decided that make broadband technology accessible to 100 million households. There are 100 million households in the United States that do not have, that are underserved or unserved. Our target, 15 million homes. 15 million homes or 15 million homes in the rural area. So you have 100 million homes in the United States that are underserved and unserved. Our target is 15 million. Out of that 15 million, we are targeting 100,000 subscribers. Very small number, so it's a very doable number. That's what's important. Market size, we talked about. For example, right now, 2011, information, $43 billion is a broadband market. By 2017, it's projected to be $57 billion. By 2018, $251 billion. Just a small part of that is where we're after, small portion. Again, we said 100 million households without broadband service. Now, for those that don't understand, broadband service is not just internet. The FCC made a definition and said 4 megabits per second is considered broadband. Anything above that is broadband. Anything below that is not. Of course, we're trying to change the rule now to 25 megabits, but 4 was the number. So that's one of the reasons we're targeting the rural areas, 4 being that number. Now, just for those that may not know, who have Netflix or whatever, it normally requires about 15 megabits per second, which is a lot higher than 4, in order to be able to watch movies without that little circle buffering. So you can only imagine that 4 megabits in a rural area is not good enough for them to even watch Netflix. Finally, I mentioned there are 15 million underserved areas. Again, 100,000 subscribers is what SigmaBroadband is targeting. Now that 100,000 subscribers at the end of our period from start to finish will yield $118 million. That is just the revenue, $118 million. It doesn't take into account what we call exit value, which we'll talk about here shortly in a little bit. Right now, SigmaBroadband has identified roll-up targets in Nevada, Arizona, and Missouri. We have identified those targets, and I said roll-up because that's exactly what we're seeking funding for. We're seeking funding to roll up existing companies into SigmaBroadband. This illustration here is what they call the ISP backbone. Very simply stated, this is what we have licensed to utilize. We don't have to go out and establish a relationship with CenturyLink or AT&T or anyone else to use their lines. We already have licenses that say they have to let us use those lines. So what that does for us, that means that we don't have to go out as a company and build an infrastructure and take time before we start getting revenue in place. That means we're going to be using existing infrastructure. And that's just an example of the type of infrastructure we've used. For example, it's connecting different towns and different cities. Benefits, we're able to make breakthroughs as far as we're concerned with triple play because the rural areas right now, we're going to take advantage of technology, the latest technology. And one of the things with technology, as you all know, you look at TV sets, look how big they used to be. Look how they are now. They're getting lighter and smaller and flatter. Also, there's something else that happens. Everybody knows who's bought a television lately, the price goes down. That's what we're able to take advantage of. Timing is everything. And right now is the time for us to go to action. Excuse me. We're making a commitment toward the rural areas. We do not have to go in and redesign existing networks. One of the things, I don't know if anyone's ever heard, is a word called future-proof. And future-proofing is something that really doesn't exist. What I used to say is you can't future-proof if you can't predict the future, if you don't know what's going to happen. But what you can do is have in between point A and point B a technology that can be used for future, whether it's fiber optics, whether it's coax or not. The change is going to be on both ends, and that's where SigmaBroadband comes in, utilizing less expensive technology and utilizing the physical plant that is currently in place. We are equipped to bring voice, data, and solutions to the underserved area. We do have $10 million in assets currently on the ground, and we're ready to exercise that $10 million. That's in our S1 report. It's also in our literature that we've passed out and made available to you. We have a platform that allows us to deliver these services through plain old telephone lines. That's twisted pair for most of you to know. Higher bandwidth through twisted pair. The telephone companies are not interested in the rural area. They're not interested in the rural location. They're there because they have to be there. They're there because they're there. Yeah. A lot of companies have tried this and said, I'm going to go into rural areas, I'm going to provide service. And they failed. Why? The reason they failed was because they went in and said, let's bring all of the Cadillac equipment into these areas and do what we need to do. Let's build fiber optics 20 miles out to the one farmhouse. Mistake, mistake, mistake. We don't look at it that way. What you do, there's a technology called wireless, and WiMAX is available. Between point A and point B, you use that technology. You don't, and you still be able to provide the type of service that's necessary. We have a seasoned management team and a lot of years of experience, and this is a ground floor opportunity. This is some idea of the cable providers that exist right now, which covers 98% of the homes only have one choice for a cable provider. We're going to operate in the rural areas, but we'll also be adjacent to some areas where we'll be competing against a Cox or a Charter or a Time Warner, but we're going to be an alternative and a good alternative. Why? Right here. Here's the difference. Here's the difference. I will take time with this slide. The difference is we got the competitor. We've got SigmaBroadband. So what's the difference? They have triple play, we have triple play. So what makes the difference? Most competitors have a term contract. You have to be with us for 2 years and you get this great rate. We have one rate. That rate will be a rate for a long, long time, and there will not be a contract involved. Our CapEx is lower. Again, remember I mentioned, we don't have to go out and build network. We're going to utilize existing network. There are cable operators right now that have walked away from some existing network because they didn't know how to take care of it and didn't know how to move things forward. No credit check, no deposit. So you said, well, okay, how can you do $99? That doesn't make any sense. Let me ask a question. How many of you have cable service right now? Or a show of hands. Okay. And how many of you have 150 to 200 channels of cable service? Okay. Prime example. That $99, that's not 150 to 250 channels. You say, well, wait a minute, so why would I pay for it? I'm going to ask you one more question. Of your 150 to 250 channels, how many of you only watch the same 25 to 30 channels? Okay? Point. That's our point. A bundle designed for the individual as much as possible. That is our goal. So that's how you get the price down. We're not going to say, here's 150 channels, take it. Here's 250 channels, take it. We're going to have packages that make it reasonable. That's how you bring the price down. We're ready to deploy right now. We're ready to deploy. We're seeking finance. We're ready to deploy services right now. Strategies and goals, double-digit growth. We know that as soon as our product is there, we're going to have a tremendous number of people that are desiring our product. Superior product, high speed. We're going to have DOCSIS 3.0, for those who may not know. That allows more speed. What do we plan to do? Well, again, I said we don't want to go out and just say, let's just go build. We plan to roll up existing companies. There are a lot right now that we can roll up, provide immediate revenue to SigmaBroadband. We have equipment, as I mentioned, $10 million worth of equipment right now and assets that we can utilize that are on the ground, that is on the ground. Again, another competitive advantage, multiple technologies, multiple mediums. That is important. That is a difference. We haven't stepped away like someone said, okay, we're going to use fiber optics. We will use whatever is necessary to provide service at that particular location. We right now are working on agreements that we have that is immediate access to 923 miles of network covering 500,000 homes in Arizona, Nevada, and Missouri. We have those targets in place. We're ready to go. We need funding. We are a pre-revenue. We are a development company. We have identified them. That involves what we call 23 head-ins. Those head-ins are where we bring the signal down and we provide the signal for the customers in those areas. And last but not least, I mentioned we are strategically ready to go, and our network is going to become just a natural monopoly. Because why? Because of the private infrastructure. Our goal is to bring immediate returns for our investment stakeholders. That is exactly why we said we're looking for roll-ups. Our ideal and our goal is to take the capital money and do roll-ups. Again, give you some idea. Wow. Purchased customers in Illinois, Ohio, Southeast Midwestern states, and that's around the Missouri area. Time Warner, $3 billion for 700,000 customers. $3 billion. Now, you may see what I'm leading to here because you do the math yourself, and $3 billion divided by 700,000 is well over $4,000 a sub. You take a look down here at Baja, $267 million for, and that was only 90,000 or 200,000 customers. Do the math. So what are we saying? This. $25 million as an investment. That's what we're looking for. So what does that mean? 100,000 customers at exit. $250 is our investment on a per subscriber basis. $99 revenue, remember I said that's not 150 channels. 100,000 customers gives us a little over $118 million at exit, or you'll say annually. But you say at exit, right there, sellable value. We're on the low side, $3,500 per customer. That's on the low side. $350 million would be the take at exit, minus the $25 million original investment. That is a business that you want to be involved in. You can look, the minimum customer sold was $2,500. So with that being said, I open the floor for any questions.
What did you say the MPS was that you were planning
I'm sorry.
The speed for the rural areas?
Oh, the speed for the rural areas? Minimum 25 megabits per second. That's the minimum.
You know, because I really have, that's something that was interesting for me. We have Cox cable in the panhandle of Florida where I live. Constantly having problems with intermittent service, dropping. So we called AT&T, had sent out UVerse email blast. So I called them up and asked them to come out. We ordered it, they came to install it, and unfortunately I did some research with Googling their product and their statistics and their speeds. And when the tech came out, I had an honest one, thank goodness. And he told me that although they said we had it in our area, they really didn't have it in our area, not the new UVerse, that what they put everything now, all the branding went under the UVerse. What they were going to install was energized, pumped up DSL as much as they could, that they had pushed it to the max. When the speeds that I thought I had that I was complaining about, we were really going to get downloads like 1.0.
Less. It would be less than what you had to begin with.
Yeah,
that is correct.
So, I mean, and he said that's what those salespeople will tell you. He said they call it UVerse, it's not. So you think you're getting it. So just from the standpoint of what your messaging is going to be and what you're able to deliver, I think we're getting right now between 12 and 14 with Cox on uploads and downloads, which the tech said was really good. And he said you're going to see an enormous, if you go to UVerse and it's not the real UVerse that they're going to bring out, or they brought it out in a few areas, you're going to see a drop of 4.
That is correct.
Frustrated. So with that in mind, what will these people in the rural areas actually be able to see as far as their daily services of uploads and downloads? Are they going to be able to get an actual 12 and 14, or both going up and down, or will it be less or more? What will they actually see?
Well, the underserved and unserved areas, they get 4 megabits per second or less. Now, you have to realize that we are targeting some areas. We're not just going to totally go out and blanket every area, but we're targeting. The wireless capabilities are up to 300 megabits per second. So if you remember I mentioned, we're not going to say, let's spend money and run fiber out 20 miles to a home. But we can put it on a wireless network and provide higher bandwidth. Twisted pair does have its limitations, which is exactly what you experienced. The new UVerse, as you mentioned, is actually fiber optics, and that's obviously hard. But you don't have to have fiber optics to get to a lot of these locations. We use microwave, licensed microwave, to get from point A to point B. And then after we utilize the microwave, we do wireless routine, which means we can also deliver video, we can deliver internet, and we can also deliver television through wireless. So does that answer your question?
It did. But do you think that even the people in the rural areas will be getting more than 4?
Oh, absolutely. With our service, it would be more than 4 megabits per second. And again, we're going to have to target locations. We're not going to just go out and just blanket and say, let's go into this particular area, because we'll study it from an engineering perspective and say, this is an ideal area. Because the worst thing any company could do is say, this is what we're going to deliver, and you don't deliver. That's the worst thing. So not every single area in rural is, do we want.
When you say the exit, you had it several times in there. What is the real plan?
The real plan, 100,000 subscribers. And I'll tell you what, since we're going to be near the Comcast, the Time Warners and all, what we're doing is going to be a little bit different. We will offer local stations on a free basis. Now, most of you know you're paying for the local stations. That gets us in the door, all right, right there. There's no reason why. We've had discussions, for example, in Arizona with the local TV stations, and normally it's a thing called retransmission consent, where the cable operator pays the local station. If we're offering it free, then there's no charge for it. So that gets you in the door. The next question is, well, just a second, if you're giving me free basics, do you have internet too? Yes, we do. Everybody's watching what I'll call it the cord cutters. It's eventually going to be an a la carte world. Why don't we get there first? As SigmaBroadband, let's get there, because that's where we're moving. HBO, ESPN right now, they are selling directly to the public. People are using Netflix, Hulu, Zulu, to watch programming. So.
How much do you need to get your first 2,500 customers so you actually have some customers paying a fee and making some money and purchasing a lot?
We would need, depending on the systems that we're acquiring, we would need at least $6.25 million to gather us probably around 3,000 customers just to begin with. And then, because we have a target, we have a system that's identified. So obviously, the more capital we get, the faster we can ramp up to that 100,000. And that's the key. That 100,000 is based over a 5.5-year period. All right. However, the sooner that the capital is in place, the quicker we get to that number. And the quicker we get to that number, then that gives us an option to either continue to operate that system or to sell it to the Comcast, the Time Warners. They don't want to do the heavy lifting in those areas. We'll do the heavy lifting. But those of you that decide to partner with us will also obviously reap rewards. Okay. Any other questions?
Do you have an offering memorandum, or are you trying to raise it just through public stock?
Right now, just through public stock.
It's a registered direct, correct? You got 25 million shares, right?
That is correct. 25 million shares registered direct for sale. And again, we are SGRB. We are on the OTC, QB. And we'd appreciate it if you want to stop at our booth and ask us any questions, and also one-on-one. We'd love to spend a little bit more time.
Pre-money valuation of the company?
I'm sorry?
The pre-money valuation of the company based on the dollar a share?
Based on the dollar share, currently 25.
What is the pre-money valuation?
There's 500 million shares that are authorized, all right?
How many are issued before?
Right now, we have 27.5 million at this point. Okay, all right, thank you.
Hello, I'm Michael Fugler, your host with Interlink TV. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Kelvin Smith. He is the CEO and COO of SigmaBroadband Company. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure being here, Michael.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, CEO and COO, you just don't have enough to do.
Absolutely. I get remburn from changing a hat from one to the other.
I know that it's you're at a stage right now where you're just right about to bust wide open looking for the rollout of your opportunity. And it was a wonderful presentation that I saw you give, and I do want to share with our viewing audience, what is Sigma Broadband? What's its target? What do you hope to achieve?
Sigma Broadband is a triple play company, just like any other operator. We have 3 services that we will be providing. That's internet, telephone, and also television. In rural areas, our focus is rural, not metropolitan areas.
Yeah, I was going to say, wow, viewers are bombarded with social media, television, blast of all kind about bundling. So let's define a little bit more clearly which areas are you looking for? And when you say rural, let's explain, what do we mean? What particular parts of you're in the United States, of course.
Yes.
Where are you targeting, and what does rural mean?
Well, first of all, we're licensed to operate in all 50 states. That's the first thing that's important. We have licenses that allow us to use existing infrastructure. Secondly, I think it's important that the audience understand there are 100 million underserved and unserved homes in the United States.
That's a big number. Wow.
It's a very large number. Rural encompasses 15% of that. So there's 15 million homes in a rural area, the farm areas, the areas where there may be only 2 or 3 homes per mile. So it's a lot less dense than a metro area.
When I saw you giving your presentation earlier, it seems like you had on the screen 3 or 4 particular areas targeted, 3 or 4 particular states. Can you zero in on those for our viewers to see where are you targeting to go first?
Absolutely. Well, we are targeting one of 3 locations. That's Arizona, Missouri, and Nevada. We've identified targets there, locations where there are rural areas. There are operators. So our goal is to go in and to actually roll these operators up into Sigma Broadband. So there is a revenue source there already, which works great for our investors. But more than anything, we'll go in, we'll infuse capital, and we will increase the internet speeds and provide some offerings to those subscribers in that area that they don't have right now. Give you an example. Television, internet, and video. Right now, most of the operators, you have to take 150 to 250 channels. That is a very difficult scenario. We're offering a service, it'll be at $99 for what we call the triple play. And the $99, most people say, well, how do you do that? Well, first of all, we have fewer channels. It doesn't mean we won't have the channels you want, because we'll work with our consumers to find out what channels they do want.
So sort of a customization.
Exactly.
What the consumer wants to have.
Exactly.
You'll try to deliver it.
We will try.
And I know you asked the question, he asked the question earlier when he did the presentation. How many people in the room have like 150 channels? And a lot of hands went up, and then it was like, well, how many of you only watch the same 20 or 25 channels over and over again and don't worry about the rest? And a lot of hands went up. So it's very well taken, the point well taken, that a lot of our viewers, I'm sure, feel the same as the audience members, which was they like what they like and they don't really deviate that much, maybe flipping a few here or there, but 20, 25, 30 channels probably catches most people's interest.
It catches most people's interest, and at some point in time, unfortunately, as much as the programmers would like to push away, we're going to move to an a la carte society. The fact of the matter is that in the United States, we don't do it. Outside this country, there are certain government groups, similar to the FCC, that actually dictate that the consumer have choice. So they don't have to take 150 channels. So we can see that right now. We've got ESPN, we've got HBO, we've got CBS, who are now selling directly to the public, which they weren't doing before. Mm-hmm. They see the picture, and they know where we're going. So with that, Sigma Broadband wants to get out in the front of this and make sure that we are offering a semi-quasi a la carte television program.
So there's a couple of things I want to share with our viewers before we wrap it up. One is we need to mention, and I want to, that you're a public company.
Yes.
And you have trading symbols SGRB.
That is correct.
And you're on the OTCQB.
That is correct.
Also, I want to point out that there are areas, those that you targeted are not necessarily in a particular order, and there are other areas that could pop up. If I was sitting at home and I were in a rural area and I don't have the kind of coverage or any coverage whatsoever, I would be wondering right now, if people contact you from areas, maybe their chamber of commerce, maybe their local town, their village, their community, whatever it may be, can they contact you and say, hey, look at us, look at our area? Could they possibly get on a list or accelerate getting service by direct communication with the company?
Absolutely. In fact, it is. We'd like that because that helps us with our search on where we start. We may have identified targets, but that doesn't mean that's the most viable targets to actually provide service to.
So whether you're alone as an individual person and viewer, or whether you are part of a community and you have a spokes group, like a chamber or like a village or, the mayor or whoever it may be, give them a call, send them an email, and let them know you don't have the service you want and you'd like to get it. Also, I know that you have a lot of information on your website, and you also have documents that have been filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, so you can go to sec.gov, of course, find out about the company, find out what they're doing now, go to the website, see what they're talking about historically and where they're going.
Exactly.
I tell you what, it's a great story, and I know that if I were in a rural area, I'd be jumping up and down and excited just knowing that somebody like you is bringing that kind of service. So thank you for that. I'm sure they'll thank you when they hear from you.
Well, we're excited about the opportunity.
And thank you for joining me. I'm Michael Fugel, your host with InterLinked TV, and we'll see you next time.